out of Capitol Hill and welcome Senator Mike Braun, Republican of Indiana, who serves on the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, as well as on the Budget Committee. Senator, thank you so much for joining us. You are in Washington. We heard from President Trump late yesterday. What is your assessment from what you know, what you've been briefed on, about where we are with respect to the United States and the coronavirus?
So most of us were briefed, if you attended on Tuesday, in the top secret meeting. And to be honest, I was impressed that from the Department of Homeland Security, CDC, NIH, FDA, we're as prepared as any country can be. And I think what's bothered me most is how it's been sensationalized in a political way. I believe in a real way, we need to take this for what it is. I think it's going to be one of maybe several instances that we might confront over time that's going to say, do you have the infrastructure? Do you have the institutions to deal with it? And David, my real concern would be if I were the Chinese government, where it all started, to where the carnage economically and in lives lost is going to be hard to measure, and it's got to have them reeling. In our case, we take it for what it is, something that's got a lot of unknown variables to it, but I believe we're as well prepared as any country in the world to deal with it. And it's shameful that Chuck Schumer does his shuffle like he does on many issues to politicize it.
So as far as the United States goes, because I want to come back to China in a moment, but as far as the United States goes, as far as what you've seen, you believe that we can contain it realistically?
We are going to be better at that than any country because we've got the infrastructure to do it. And so far, we've had very few cases outside of the cruise ship individuals that, thank goodness, are back here in the homeland. But I think what has surprised me most, I guess it shouldn't, I've been here just a little over a year, any issue has a political angle put to it. And I think what Chuck Schumer did in this case is kind of shameful because he wasn't at that briefing that I recalled back on Tuesday. He was out at the microphone or on the floor making statements to me that didn't make sense. I think what the president has done, assigning Vice President Pence as a point person for this, but mostly the institutions, the infrastructure we've got in place, lets us deal with this as good as any other place.
As I understand it, under the Trump administration, that infrastructure has been changed some. I mean, for example, there's a person at NSC, the National Security Council, who was let go, was not replaced. There's some other people who have not been replaced. Are you confident that we have the people in place in the infrastructure going down from the White House on down to Department of Homeland Security and other places who can handle something if it does become more of an epidemic in the United States?
I do, and I think whenever you look at personnel changes that have been cited as maybe making us not prepared, again, I think that's got a strong political smell to it. And these institutions that I mentioned earlier have been around for a long time, and I think that's where you'll see the difference. On the other hand, this is unknown in terms of the extrapolation of what happens, but I think we're going to get through it. And I think in containing it, and when it comes to like the vaccine that we're talking about, that'll be done here. They're much quicker than what they used to be, and we'll all learn from it. And sadly, I think with the kind of economy we've got now, we'll have stuff like this originate in places that we'll have to deal with down the road. And I think this is a good heads up for us and the world to maybe sharpen our skills with it.
We're talking to Senator Mike Braun, Republican of Indiana. I want to go to exactly where you just pointed us, which is the supply chain issue. Those have already come under some stress because of some trade tensions. But as a result of this, there really are some questions about disruption of supply chains coming out of China. As a practical matter, is it likely this is going to change our relations, our commercial relations around the world in the longer term?
I think it definitely will. When you take what we've had to deal with China in forced technology transfers, the IP issues, currency manipulations, creating these gluts and dumping them, with the tariffs, I don't like tariffs, but I think the president was correct. We would not have gotten their attention. And this, along with the African swine fever on their pork supply, this is probably more devastating to China than any of what we grappled with them to try to change their behavior. And yes, the companies that have gone deeply into China with their supply chain, I'm sure, are looking at what they do to spread their eggs into other baskets, hedge their bets. That'll be the true cost to the Chinese, and I think they're going to have a lot of soul searching to do about how they react to it once we get through the hysteria of the moment.
And Senator, finally, you know business terribly well. You run a successful business.
Yeah.
What about the possible knock-on effects in the consumer confidence aspect? Because some people have said, even beyond the direct effects on supply chains and things, if the consumers, particularly American consumer, gets concerned, stops spending on some discretionary things, it could hit our economy.
So that is where I have more confidence. The consumer is savvy, and they've been part of, as a consumer, with household incomes that have gone up $5,000 a family since Trump has been here versus $1,000 from the stretch of Bush through Obama over 16 years. This economy on Main Street is hotter than it's ever been. That's what's been driving the market. That's why I think we'll get some of the market back. There will be real economic loss that we won't get back. But I think the consumer knows this is an outlier, it's an aberration, and has confidence in our country, in the infrastructure we got to get through it. And they'll be watchful, but I think it's not going to disrupt in general what's been set into place back in 2016 with the Jobs and Tax Cut Act. All of that is driving the economy here better than any other place in the world.
Senator, really appreciate your time as always. That's Senator Mike Braun, Republican of Indiana, coming to us from Capitol Hill.